నమస్తే, వెల్కమ్ టు నేషనలిస్ట్ హబ్. ఈరోజు ఒక విశిష్టమైన అతిథి నేషనలిస్ట్ హబ్ స్టూడియోలో ఉన్నారు. వారెవరో కాదు, భారత జాతీయ సమాచార కమిషనర్ ఉదయ్ మాహుర్కర్ గారు ప్రస్తుతం నేషనలిస్ట్ హబ్ స్టూడియోలో ఉన్నారు. వారికి స్వాగతం పలుకుదాం. నమస్కారం ఉదయ్ మాహుర్కర్ గారు, చర్చకు స్వాగతం. ఈ నేషనలిస్ట్ హబ్ వేదిక పైన వారిని మీకు పరిచయం చేసే భాగ్యం నాకు కలిగింది. అండ్ నాతో పాటు అంతర్జాతీయ వ్యవహారాల నిపుణులు, విశ్లేషకులు మామిడి గిరిధర్ గారు కూడా ఈ చర్చలో జాయిన్ అవుతున్నారు. ఈరోజు మేము చర్చించబోతున్న అంశం గురించి ఉదయ్ మాహుర్కర్ గారు హైదరాబాద్లో ఒక కార్యక్రమం కోసం హైదరాబాద్కి రావడం జరిగింది. అదేంటంటే వీర్ సావర్కర్కి సంబంధించిన పుస్తకం వారు రచించారు. ఇది ఆ పుస్తకం ఏంటంటే వీర్ సావర్కర్, ద మ్యాన్ హూ కుడ్ హ్యావ్ ప్రివెంటెడ్ పార్టీషన్. దేశ విభజనను వీర్ సావర్కర్ ఆపగలిగేవాడు అనేది వారు రాసిన పుస్తకం. వీర్ సావర్కర్ జీవిత విశేషాలని, ఆయన విజన్ని, హిందుత్వ పట్ల ఆయన ఆలోచనల్ని అన్నిటినీ కూడా క్రోఢీకరించి ఈ పుస్తకాన్ని మన ముందుకు తీసుకురావడం జరిగింది. అండ్ అంతేకాదు, హైదరాబాద్లో జరిగిన ఈ కార్యక్రమం ఏంటి అంటే వీర్ సావర్కర్ ముఖ్యంగా నేషనల్ సెక్యూరిటీకి సంబంధించి ఒక పితామహుడుగా ఆయనను అభివర్ణిస్తూ ఒక టాక్ని ఇక్కడ నిర్వహించడం జరిగింది. ప్రజ్ఞాభారతి సారథ్యంలో జరిగినటువంటి ఆ టాక్లో ఉదయ్ మాహుర్కర్ గారు మాట్లాడడం జరిగింది. ఈ రెండు అంశాల గురించి నేను చర్చించాలనుకుంటున్నాను. ఉదయ్ మాహుర్కర్ గారి దృష్టిలో వీర్ సావర్కర్ హిందుత్వ విధానం ఎటువంటిది, అండ్ దేశ భద్రత విషయంలో వీర్ సావర్కర్ విజన్ ఎలా ఉండేది అనే అంశాల గురించి ఈరోజు చర్చించబోతున్నాను. అండ్ ఉదయ్ మాహుర్కర్ గారి గురించి చెప్పాలి అని అంటే ఆయన ప్రస్తుతం సెంట్రల్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ కమిషనర్గా ఉన్నారు. అండ్ అంతకంటే ముందు 33 సంవత్సరాల పాటు ఇండియా టుడే మ్యాగజైన్కి వారు వర్క్ చేశారు. సీనియర్ డిప్యూటీ ఎడిటర్గా వారు పదవీ బాధ్యతలు నిర్వర్తించారు. అండ్ అంతేకాదు, అంతకుముందు 2 పుస్తకాలు కూడా వారు రిలీజ్ చేయడం జరిగింది. వారి నుంచి 2014లో సెంటర్ స్టేజ్ ఇన్సైడ్ ద నరేంద్ర మోదీ మోడల్ ఆఫ్ గవర్నెన్స్ అనే పుస్తకాన్ని వారు తీసుకురావడం జరిగింది, రచించడం జరిగింది. నరేంద్ర మోదీ ప్రధానమంత్రి కాబోయే వ్యక్తి అని మొట్టమొదట భారతదేశంలో ప్రకటించినటువంటి ఒక జర్నలిస్ట్ లేదా ఒక మేధావి వర్గం నుంచి వచ్చిన వ్యక్తి అంటే ఉదయ్ మాహుర్కర్ గారే. 2010లో ఆయన ప్రెడిక్ట్ చేయడం జరిగింది, నరేంద్ర మోదీ రాబోయే రోజుల్లో ప్రధానమంత్రి కాబోతున్నారు, దానికి కావాల్సిన పూర్తి అర్హతలు ఉన్నాయి అంటూ ఆయన చెప్పడం జరిగింది. అండ్ అంతేకాదు, 2017లో మోదీ ప్రధానిగా బాధ్యతలు స్వీకరించిన తర్వాత 3 సంవత్సరాలకు 2017లో మార్చింగ్ విత్ బిలియన్ అంటూ మోదీ 3 ఏళ్ల పాలన గురించి కూడా ఆయన అద్భుతమైన పుస్తకాన్ని మన ముందుకు తీసుకురావడం జరిగింది. అండ్ ఇప్పుడు ఈ వీర్ సావర్కర్కి సంబంధించిన పుస్తకాన్ని కూడా మన ముందుకు తీసుకొచ్చారు. దీనికి ఆర్ఎస్ఎస్ చీఫ్ మోహన్జీ భగవత్ ఫోర్వర్డ్ ముందు మాట రాయడం జరిగింది. సో ఇది ఉదయ్ మాహుర్కర్ గారికి సంబంధించిన ఒక బ్రీఫ్ ఇంట్రడక్షన్. ఇంతకంటే ఇంకా చాలా అంశాలు ఉదయ్ మాహుర్కర్ గారి నుంచి తెలుసుకోవాల్సినవి ఉన్నాయి. అండ్ ఈ పుస్తకానికి సంబంధించి కావచ్చు, వీర్ సావర్కర్ గురించి కావచ్చు, ప్రస్తుతం జరుగుతున్న పరిణామాలకు సంబంధించి కావచ్చు, వారు ఏ విషయాలు చెప్తారో తెలుసుకునే ప్రయత్నం చేద్దాం. అండ్ నాతో పాటు మామిడి గిరిధర్ గారు కూడా వారిని కొన్ని ప్రశ్నలు సంధించి విషయాల్ని తెలుసుకునే ప్రయత్నం చేయబోతున్నాం. Namaste sir, it's really a great privilege for us to be here in this Nationalist Hub platform, sir. Thank you very much for accepting our request.
Welcome.
And speaking to us. My first question is this, sir. Veer Savarkar, the man who could have prevented partition, the title of the book. And can you please explain about the title itself? Really, Veer Savarkar could have prevented the partition? Why didn't he?
Veer Savarkar was released from internment in Ratnagiri in 1937. He was free to participate in politics in 1937. That's when he stepped into politics. Otherwise, 14 years he was in rigorous imprisonment. 13 years he was in Ratnagiri, where he was disallowed from participating in political activity. Correct? So, Veer Savarkar had a choice. He could have joined Congress also. Subhash Chandra Bose, Achyut Rao Patwardhan, S.M. Joshi, such Congress leaders who were considered to be the leaders of the socialist bloc, they wanted Savarkar with them in the Congress party. But Savarkar refused. Savarkar said, Congress has gone so far ahead on the path of Muslim appeasement that it cannot retrace its steps. And to do Muslim appeasement in this country, in Bharatvarsha, at the cost of Hindu rights, is betrayal of the nation. And that time he issued a statement. It is better to stand in the last row of patriots than the first row of those who are indulging in Muslim appeasement at the cost of Hindu rights, which he called betrayal of the nation.
Okay.
Correct? So, how was the situation? I will tell you. Veer Savarkar was the first to see that this idea called Pakistan is taking shape. In 1930, Muhammad Iqbal, whose poetries our poets, recite without knowing that he wrote Sare Jahan Se Acha when he was a nationalist. Later on, he became a pan-Islamist. Correct. In 1930, when he had become a pan-Islamist, in the Lahore session of Indian Muslim League, he was a member of Indian Muslim League. He for the first time predicted that I see a separate nation for Indian Muslims in Sindh, Punjab, comprising Sindh, Punjab, Northwest Frontier Province and Balochistan.
Okay.
Precisely today's Pakistan. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct. Then 2 years later, a Muslim called Rahmat Ali Chaudhry, he was from Jalandhar, he was a Gujjar Muslim, he was studying in Oxford. He coined the word Pakistan for this future Muslim homeland.
Okay.
And it was Jinnah who gave it shape.
Okay.
Correct? In 1936, Sindh was suddenly detached from Mumbai province. It was part of Mumbai state, old Mumbai state. And Savarkar was the first to see that things are moving in the direction of partition. And he called the detachment of Sindh by the British government at that time as a Muslim Anglo conspiracy.
Okay.
So Savarkar was first to see the danger of Pakistan. Pakistan word was there.
Correct.
From 1932 onwards, but nobody took it seriously. It was only Savarkar who took it seriously.
Okay. Correct.
And therefore, he chose to join Hindu Mahasabha, a party which was dubbed as communal, but whose main job was to protect Hindu interest, because Congress was sacrificing Hindu interest for its Muslim appeasement. Basically, Congress model was Hindu-Muslim unity at Hindu cost. That was the Congress model. Correct?
Yes.
Savarkar, he launched a campaign to awaken the nation against the dangers of Muslim appeasement, and he was repeatedly hinting and later on saying openly that Pakistan can be a reality.
Okay.
So he was telling Congress leaders on one hand, and he was telling the people of the nation on the other hand. Correct? And what steps did he take? I'll tell you. In 1938, he saw that the number of Hindus in the then British Indian Army are much less as compared to Muslims in terms of their population ratio. And he had seen that Pakistan can happen in future. And if that day India is weaker than Pakistan in military terms, then India will have to pay further price.
Further price.
So he started a campaign for the militarization of Hindus. Correct? Which is what it did. Hindu Sabha started a campaign, and in the meantime, Second World War started.
Correct.
So, Britishers were in need of soldiers. Savarkar said that you see this as a great opportunity to join the army and learn arms, take arms training.
Correct.
He said once the gun is in your hands, where to turn the barrel is in your hands, you know. So he started this campaign, and see the effect of this campaign. From between 1939 and 1944, Muslim League or their leaders issued 4 warnings. 4 statements are there on record, saying that this Hindus entering this, recruiting in such large numbers in the army is very dangerous for us, because they knew that they will get Pakistan. So they knew the game. Only Congress was unaware.
Okay.
You get my point? So now what was the effect of this militarization campaign? Just imagine, had India been weaker at the time of independence, militarily, as compared to Pakistan, they took away Kashmir, a part of Kashmir.
Correct.
They were sharing border in Rajasthan, Gujarat, in Bengal. They could have attacked those territories also, had they been stronger than India militarily at the time of partition. So Savarkar's that drive really helped India post-partition also.
Okay.
That's a great contribution. Apart from that, Savarkar, as I told you, was warning the nation and Congress against the Muslim appeasement policy, which he said can lead to partition. In 1940, when Jinnah passed the Pakistan resolution on 23rd March, leaders of the Congress, including Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, said that Pakistan will happen on our dead bodies.
Correct.
Savarkar said, you are wrong. You are taking the nation in that direction through your policies. It can happen. And Savarkar was proved correct 7 years later. In 1944, he called the Akhand Hindustan Conference in Delhi to oppose the Muslim appeasement policies of Congress and to build pressure on the Congress, public pressure on the Congress, not to yield to Muslim demands, which he thought would lead to partition. Because Pakistan resolution had already been passed in 1940.
Correct.
So it was in public domain. Correct? And who were the leaders who participated in that conference? Intellectuals. Correct? Radhakumud Mukherjee, the most respected historian of that time. Srinivas Sastry, another intellectual from the south. Ramanand Chatterjee, editor of Modern Review, the India Today of that time. Such were the people who participated in the Akhand Hindustan Conference. So, what I am saying is he did his best to prevent partition. Now, why he lost? Correct. You see, Pakistan was granted within 15 days of of Jinnah making this demand. Jinnah passed his resolution on 23rd March 1940. On 6th April 1940, within 15 days, Mahatma Gandhi wrote an article in, I think, Harijan or Young Leader, one of the two organs of Congress, He opposed partition, but his reasons were different. He would say that it will harm Hindu-Muslim unity. He was obsessed with Hindu-Muslim unity at any cost, as I told you earlier, correct?
Correct.
In the end, he writes, if 8 crore Muslims don't want to live in India, how can I prevent them? So he had granted partition within 15 days. You get my point?
Correct, sir. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Now, how flawed this strategy was. The day Muslim League make this demand, Pakistan, there are many Muslim leaders in the country who are opposing the idea. Sikandar Ayat Khan, Fazlul Haq, who later on went on to join Muslim League. All these people were opposing partition for various reasons. Correct? So what Congress should have done? Congress should have formed an anti-Pakistan front. What Congress should have done? It should have made an anti-Pakistan front of leaders comprising Congress, Hindu Mahasabha, and those Muslim leaders who are opposing partition. Instead, Congress chose to deal with Jinnah only. As a result, Jinnah's stature started going up, and proportionally the stature of other leaders who had opposed partition started coming down. In order to save their career, then in the end they had to join Jinnah only.
Okay.
Why he failed?
Yeah,
I'll come to that. Correct. Now, a stage came when this Hindu Mahasabha campaign under leadership of Savarkar started creating waves in the country. And people started thinking that Congress is taking us on the wrong path. In the meantime, Central Assembly elections were announced. Provincial Assembly elections were announced by British. The last 2 elections before partition, correct? The Congress got scared. And then Congress, as part of its dirty strategy, Congress had in 1942 passed a resolution saying same thing as what Gandhiji said 2 years earlier, that provinces will have a right to self-determination after British leave India.
Okay.
Again granting partition, almost, correct?
Granting partition, that's it.
Against that, when they saw that they might lose the election or they might not do so well in the elections, they changed the tune and they said that we are also for Akhand Hindustan. Correct? Savarkar kept on warning the nation and the people of this country that look here, Congress is taking you for a ride. The moment the elections are over, Congress will again start kneeling before Muslim League and grant Pakistan. And same thing happened. But what happened? Because Congress hijacked the Akhand Hindustan slogan of Savarkar, Because Congress was a much bigger party than Hindu Mahasabha. It had a leader called Mahatma Gandhi who had a great standing in those days, you know.
Okay.
Plus they used Sardar Patel also in that
Okay, correct.
for some rebel rousing. Correct? The Hindu Mahasabha was totally defeated in that election. It could not win a single seat, though the total number of votes it got was 16%. But another thing I want to tell you along with this, those who say that Savarkar was a British agent, 1945 Shimla conference before partition,
Okay.
called by Viceroy Lord Wavell in Shimla. He did not call Hindu Mahasabha. When N.B. Khare, the member of Viceroy's Executive Council, asked Wavell, why have you not called Hindu Mahasabha and Savarkar? He said Hindu Mahasabha is a greater enemy of British than the Congress. Therefore, I have not called them.
Okay.
There is this popular belief that it was Savarkar who actually initiated this concept of a two-nation theory, where he said Muslims and Hindus can't live together. This is oft quoted by the votaries of Pakistan or the present-day Congresses who say that, we are all blaming Jinnah, but it was your Hindu leaders like Savarkar, or rather more specifically just Savarkar, who mooted this, and Jinnah just followed suit. So the blame they put on Savarkar, saying he is actually the proponent of a two-nation theory even before Jinnah. Let me add here, I think when you said Rahmat Ali, who was the one who coined this Pakistan, word Pakistan, Jinnah opposed the concept of Pakistan then. He switched to the concept of Pakistan much later. Earlier he was completely opposing the concept of division of India. But then I believe, this is what the narrative the Congress, at least the current crop, tell us, that his two-nation theory of Savarkar predates Jinnah's accepting this concept. How far is it true?
Total smear campaign. You see, Veer Savarkar, if you read our book, you will be convinced that Veer Savarkar was the greatest symbol of India's unity and integrity.
Okay.
Therefore, those who survive on divided India, it is imperative for them, for their survival, to demonize Savarkar.
Okay.
Correct? Otherwise, there is no evidence. If you interpret his book Hindutva in 1923, this is complete falsification of his book also. You see, on the last page of the book Hindutva, he says, a day will come when the world will have to face the force of 30 crore Hindus or Hindutva. Correct? But what is the next line? He says, he defines that Hindus come to rule the world. They will follow either Gita or the teachings of Gautam Buddha.
Okay.
So, in the end, he is talking about Vasudeva Kundubukam.
Okay.
That is the last page of Hindutva. So, that book has also been misquoted. He has said, those people who belong to religions born in India, for them, India is their fatherland, which is a fact.
And a holy land.
Fatherland, holy land, it's a fact. He has not said that throw them out.
But did he say, or rather what is attributed to him, did he say that Islam and Hindutva is not compatible, and so, we cannot have a whatever, coexistence or whatever?
All nonsense. There are three incidents which prove that Savarkar's Hindutva is unalloyed nationalism. It is not demanding special treatment for Hindus.
Okay.
It is demanding equal treatment for all.
Okay.
So Savarkar's Hindutva is unalloyed nationalism where religion, caste and regional pride are secondary to national pride. You have to understand one thing. There are three incidents which will help us understand, In 1938, Savarkar went to Lahore as the president of Hindu Mahasabha. And some press people asked him a question, why you and Jinnah are bent upon dividing the country along religious lines. The reply which Savarkar gave is very important for us to understand. He said, me and Jinnah are not birds of the same feather. Where Jinnah is for more and more concession for Muslims at the cost of Hindu rights, I am for equal treatment for all. Correct? In 1939, when a group of Shia Muslims of Lucknow passed a resolution out of a sense of patriotism that any Muslim slaughtering a cow will be considered an enemy of Hindu-Muslim unity. And second part of the resolution was, when Hindus pass their religious processions from near the mosques, Muslims will not oppose them. When Savarkar read this statement, he welcomed it publicly and also wrote a letter to the leader of those Shias. He said, I welcome your resolutions, and if such gestures keep coming from the Muslim community, then Hindu-Muslim unity is possible. And he went a step ahead. He said that since you have made such a genuine gesture, let me also assure you that we will try to convince Hindus not to deliberately pass their processions from near the mosque. And lastly, we have to go into his Hindu manifesto. Hindu manifesto says that people of all religions and castes will have equal rights in independent India.
Very nice.
Goes a step further. He says if the puja archana, the prayers of religious minorities, he is hinting towards Muslims and Christians, is hindered in any way, the state will step in and protect them. But in the third place, he warns, nation will not allow creation of a nation within a nation in the name of religious minoritism, which is the story of India in the last 60 years. We gave them Pakistan. Yet we were following, our governments were doing, parties were doing Muslim appeasement. After having given Pakistan for Hindus, it was partition of motherland. Correct? After having given Pakistan to them, why should pro-Muslim policies continue in this country? So he was fighting that. And see the kind of Muslim appeasement which has taken place in this country. Jinnah's 1940 resolution calling for Pakistan had two parts. First part was we Muslims of this country demand a separate nation. And second part was those Muslims who are left behind in India, how they will be treated. In that they had demanded preferential treatment. The Congress's Muslim appeasement policies in the first 60 years is basically part 2 of Pakistan resolution.
Correct.
Second, during the Khilafat movement, Congress passed a resolution that independent India's foreign policy will take into consideration the religious obligations of the Muslims. Congress was following the same policy. In 1948, Israel was formed. One of the first resolutions which Israel passed was expressing gratitude to Hindus and India for the treatment they had given to Jews over the last 2000 years.
Okay.
Yet we took 44 years after our independence to establish full diplomatic ties with Israel, because our policy was being guided by Muslims. 44 years, almost 44 years, the foreign policy of Pakistan and India was same with regard to Israel. You get my point? So Savarkar is being projected as a divisive figure only because Savarkar is the father of India's national security. If you look at the warnings he gave, he was like a Nostradamus for India's national security. All the problems India has faced on the national security front in the last 70 years, he predicted 60 to 80 years ago.
Okay.
Assam, Pakistan itself, in 1942, he told Kripalani, do you think that if we grant Pakistan, we will be able to live in peace? You won't be able to imagine the calamity which would befall Hindus and India if Pakistan is granted. Because those who are trying to force a separate nation at the point of civil war, if they get weapons in their hands, then can imagine the kind of menace they will become.
And in this book's foreword, Mohanji Bhagwatji stated in the foreword of this book is, this book is a guide for preventing another partition of the country.
He said in this book that this book is a guide to fighting divisive forces to make India a great nation. And I have said in this in the book that this book is a guide to preventing another partition of the country by learning lessons from the first partition.
Yeah, sitting in South India, sir, basically. It's in Telugu states, even in the Tamil Nadu, even Karnataka, the South India and North India divide is there. That's a political statements are being floated right now from the regional parties especially. And exactly the Gazwa-e-Hind, the Christian state, Christian country, like that statements are, we are listening to statements, right? So how do you say that Veer Savarkar is the solution for these divisive politics?
Advocate appeasement of even an inch of anybody. So it is place for all those Muslims and Christians who want to live in the mainstream. Savarkar is acceptable for them. I remember one person when I wrote my first article on this subject in India Today's red platform Delhi 2015. That time one Tabligh Jamaat leader who is known to me called me up to tell me, Uday bhai, we read your article and if this is true, then what problem we have with Savarkar? So Savarkar's Hindutva is not against anybody. It is for unity of the nation. Unalloyed nationalism. Unconditional nationalism.
Unconditional nationalism.
No condition. Nation is supreme. Everything else is secondary, including religion. That is Savarkar's Hindutva.
So let's get to this concept of religion. His concept of Hindu religion or Hindutva, whatever term that he wanted to coin, was far different from how the large majority of the country was probably following the same thing. I mean, he was not ritualistic. He was against a lot of things which are core practices of Hindutva, Hinduism, whatever you want to call that. How do you see this contradiction in his? He was considered to be more liberal, probably irreligious, or at least not a person who was known to be doing a lot of religious practices. Let's say, in contrast, somebody who lived along a contemporary of him, Guruji Golwalkar, was a practicing Hindu. He used to do Sandhya Vandan, Havan, everything. Whereas Savarkar was anything but that. So how do you see his concept of Hinduism in light of that?
Was part cultural nationalism and part political Hindutva.
Correct, okay.
It is a mix of both. You see, he lived abroad for a very long time,
So that influence is there.
So that influence is there. On some of the things of Savarkar, I also don't agree with him totally, But the point today, what is the challenge before the challenge before the country? It's unity and integrity.
Okay.
That is the challenge. So only Savarkar's Hindutva can tackle it. Unapologetic Hindutva, which has place for people of all religions. For example, Emperor Akbar, much reviled by a section of Hindutva people. I personally believe that Emperor Akbar should get some marks because he was the first person in this country during the medieval period to stop temple destruction, to withdraw religious poll tax called jizya after 300 years of Muslim atrocities on Hindu population, correct? So he should get some marks.
Some marks.
You have to understand one thing, that he was also a Kattarvadi initially. Not as big as others, correct?
He too destroyed quite a few temples.
1670, after 1670, he was a totally changed person. He was wedded to liberal ideas, correct? Now, a section of Hindutva lobby attacks Akbar, correct? And their hero is Savarkar, correct? Savarkar himself has appreciated Akbar.
Oh?
You see his works, yes?
Okay.
He has appreciated Akbar, he has appreciated Dara Shikoh.
See, history is the way you look at it. Akbar also has a huge list of temples that he himself broke. with the help of Raja Man Singh and things like that. But yes, the other part is also right that he also did something to protect them.
That's why some marks, not full marks.
Not after 1570. That is falsification of history.
Okay.
Whatever Kattarwad he did was before 1570, not after 1570. Yes. He was a genuine convert to liberal ideas. You can say that.
An interesting headline I have seen in this book, sir, which is, I want to understand that from you, which is Jinnah's Jihad in 3 parts. What is that Jinnah's Jihad and the present Jihad? I mean, is there any difference? The same Jihad here done?
We are calling Calcutta killings as Jinnah's Jihad. And Punjab killings as Jihad number 2.
Yeah.
So that was Jihad only. Calcutta killings, if you read the account we have given, the Muslim League leaders, the way they were saying, the language they were using, it was jihadi language, absolutely.
Okay.
What we are trying to say, I'll extend this further,
Yes, sir.
Those who say that Jinnah was a great liberal are wrong. Even when he was liberal, he was not that great a liberal as you think. The 1916 Lucknow Pact was drafted by Jinnah for Lokmanya Tilak. The first Muslim appeasement by Congress of Muslims, by giving them against 100 seats in Muslim majority provinces, against 100 Hindu seats, Muslims were given 200, 300 seats.
Oh.
It was structured in such a manner. Correct? The entire thing was drafted by Jinnah.
Okay.
And same argument as today, we have to have Muslims ever mainstream, so they should be given something. Same argument. How can be Jinnah that great a liberal? You tell me. That is another revelation in this book.
Okay.
He was liberal, he opposed Khilafat, but he was never as great a liberal as he is projected. That is what I am saying. Because he had drafted the Lucknow Pact. Lucknow Pact, all historians agree, except the left historians, that Lucknow Pact was the first step in the direction of Muslim appeasement, and which Tilak also got misled by the Muslim strategists, correct? So, Jinnah drafted the Lucknow Pact.
Probably it could be a little controversial, but I think we need to have an open debate in a society. So probably whatever it is, it's going to take us. Let's talk about it. What were its differences with RSS? Obviously, Hindu Mahasabha and RSS are not on the same page. Though Congress wants to paint both in the same bracket, and they attributed, for instance, Godse to be an RSS, which later on proved to be wrong. And there was obviously people moving back and forth between these two organizations. People, probably they had sympathy for both. Having said that, he was distinctly different from RSS. And the beauty is, in your book on Veer Savarkar, Mohanji Bhagwat is writing a foreword. Yes. So there is a mutual respect and also there is a difference.
That is what we have said in this book.
Yeah, so this is what I want you to help us know.
Are quite well known. Okay. Savarkar once, as a rationalist, said that cow should not be worshipped as a holy animal, Correct? Yeah. Guruji, I think, opposed it, and so that is there in short, Yeah. But the point is that even if there were differences between them, they were mutually complementary to each other. Just don't go by a few statements of Savarkar or few statements of Guruji. We have quoted here statements of Savarkar praising RSS. There were differences. There are differences in the family also.
Correct. Difference of opinions is there.
And major difference, Savarkar used to say that without political Hindutva, you cannot achieve your dream. And Guruji used to say that politics is bad. Keep away from politics. That was a major difference.
Later on, even political parties also.
BJP also, he allowed to float very grudgingly,
Yeah. Okay.
Bharatiya Janata Sangh also, Guruji, as I understand, he grudgingly agreed, to the formation of Bharatiya Janata Sangh.
Frankly, with such a personality like Veer Savarkar, with such a powerful narrative that he had, logically, I mean, we may not agree with 100% of what he said. Fine, it's all fine. Why could he not have become another Gandhiji? Yes. If Gandhiji could mobilize Hindus to such an extent, with such a powerful unifying narrative that Veer Savarkar could bring onto the table, why do you think he was not an alternative to Gandhiji?
There are 2-3 reasons. One, his language was very harsh. Gandhiji's language was very winning language. Savarkarji's language was very, very harsh. So in a tropical country like India, you have to be, you have to be very particular with your language. He was very harsh. He was very harsh. Thirdly, Gandhiji, because of his demonstration of his feelings for the poor, the clothes he used to wear, that it had a different aura, He was seen as a saintly person by the country.
Okay.
You get my point?
Yeah.
And secondly, Savarkar came in 1937. He had very little time to play any major role. He was allowed participation in politics in 1937, when Gandhiji was already there for 20 years, more than 20 years.
There was a lull, especially after the Quit India movement. From 1942 to 47, 5 years, Congress was not doing anything. Right? So that was a time when he could have brought in Hindu unification.
No. He tried his level best. You can't find fault with Savarkar.
Mahurkarji, I am not finding fault with Savarkar. What I am saying is it that his messaging is something which is not something which is really picked up seriously by the Hindus themselves?
No, I told you harsh language.
Okay.
For example, when Lal Bahadur Shastri died, Tashkent agreement was a disaster. We gave back the areas which we had won. Before that, we accepted ceasefire when we were just 13 kilometers away from Lahore. Correct?
Lahore.
So now see, I am giving an example of his harshness. When Shastriji died, we have criticized that in this book. He said, I will not pay tribute to Lal Bahadur Shastri. He has done so much of damage to my motherland that I will not pay him tribute. Person who had died. This was, I think, slightly harsh,
Slightly harsh. Yeah.
Savarkar was a totally non-populist leader. No compromise on your beliefs.
Okay.
Congress was entirely into populism, including Mahatma Gandhi.
That's a challenge in politics, actually, for a leader. Yeah. The last chapter of your book is Savarkarism. You have mentioned it like quote unquote, like Savarkarism. What is that is all about?
Removal of 370 can be called Savarkarism, part of Savarkarism.
Okay.
Opening of Ram Mandir Dwar is Savarkarism.
Okay.
The narrative is changing now.
Okay.
Let me tell you one thing.
Okay.
They have certain, the communists have certain organs with them. The space has shrunk in the last 7 years. You get my point? Yes. The Savarkar's ideology is now coming out.
While that is a fact that there is a Hindu awakening in some form or other and that the Congress's irrelevance is now picking up, the fact remains that this question again needs to be answered in terms of, is there still a threat of further balkanization of Bharat?
Certainly.
The optics, I think today's Savarkarji's Punyatithi, right? Probably this is the best time for us to take lessons from him in terms of how do we prevent further balkanization given his wisdom. While this both is happening, while Hindu awakening is happening, there is also identity crisis or identity politics happening on the other side as well. What's your message in terms of picking up from Savarkar?
Acquired a fair knowledge of how radical Islamic movements have been operating and how they are operating today. Correct? Certainly with the coming of power of this government in Delhi, they feel suddenly they are finding roadblocks. But they have not changed their direction. What is their vision? Their vision is to turn this country into a Muslim majority country. Through population increase, through demographic changes. That is their main objective. But then another thing also is very important if you want to prevent further balkanization. You see, we'll have to keep space for moderate Muslims. This whole thing of condemning the entire community is totally out of place. You have to, even if their percentage is less, you have to keep space for them. In Kashmir, for example, every week a Muslim fellow is dying, terrorist bullets. You get my point? So you have to keep some space. And let me tell you one thing. In the last 7 years since this government came, the operations against terrorists have been stepped up. 90% of the information has come from local Muslims.
And the operation is done by Kashmir police.
Kashmir police. Yes.
Army supported them from behind.
You have to keep space for them.
Yeah, but
Today I learnt in this program, there are 2 Muslim girls who have a startup, I was surprised. As it is, Muslim community doesn't have as many role models. Level of education is less, correct? Those who are doing good work, they have to be projected. You have to keep space for modern Muslims, which would mean if there are good people doing very well in their own communities, you project them. They become role models for the community.
yeah, that's a good point. In fact, post Article 370, Kashmir has seen a spurt of pro-India voices who are vocal about it now. And this year, I think during the Republic Day function program, they went and hoisted a flag on, the Gantaghar of Lal Chowk. That was a major optics. I agree with you. But the problem is people who have occupied the so-called liberal space in the Muslim world are people like, let's say, Shabana Azmi and her husband are anything but liberal. When it comes to issues, when it comes to Islam and Muslim and Hindu issues, they invariably take the Islamic line, aside, and then they call themselves liberal. This is the problem. Farhan Akhtar comes out and then demonstrates against CAA. When the reporters asked him, he had no clue of what CAA was all about. So this is the problem. The so-called liberal Muslims, even if somebody wants to really, support them or bring them on board, like you said, Jinnah initially, though he was liberal, he was, pro-Muslim appeasement. So is the case with these guys. That is the problem. That is a question that is being raised by the Hindus. That dekhe to kisko dekhe, support kare to kisko kare.
You see Muslim leadership and Muslim people separately. Then and then you will get a reply to this. They are leaders who are, pan-Islamists but masquerading as liberals. You get my point? So you have to see Muslim population and Muslim leaders differently. Then and then you will be able to tackle this problem. Otherwise not.
Previous books were on Prime Minister Narendra Modi, sir. I mean, when I was a chief minister, you wrote a book on his Gujarat's development model. After he became a prime minister also, you wrote a book. And now, what is your opinion?
No, I have been proved correct to a large extent.
Even today?
Huh.
Is there anything to be added?
My first book was released 1 month before he became prime minister. That time somebody had taken my interview, and I had said that the arrival of Narendra Modi in Delhi, I said he is becoming prime minister.
Okay.
1 month before.
Okay.
I said the arrival of Mr. Narendra Modi as prime minister will be a big shock to the favor-driven culture of Delhi. It is proved correct. There is a web portal called GEM. You know that GEM for procurement. For procurement, there is a portal called GEM.
Yeah.
Even private party can go there.
Okay.
It is actually meant for government people,
Okay.
It's a biggest example of how he has hit the middleman.
Okay.
GEM portal is a self-driven you can buy anything except planes.
Okay.
You can buy even jeep, car, everything you can buy through GEM portal. So he has made the most serious attempt in the last 70 years to remove middlemen.
Okay.
Most serious attempt. I think that is the greatest contribution of the Prime Minister to this country. Since I have written 2 books, I can say that his measures to save government money by preventing corruption, by his economy measures, annually he is saving at least rupees 2 lakh crores for the country, which were otherwise going into the hands of middlemen.
Correct. Aadhaar and Jandan accounts that he has really utilized them big time.
According to you, what are the major challenges which he has to overcome?
This country is full of challenges. Challenges will continue to come,
Okay.
Whosoever is the ruler. But the point is that he has done the very best on his part to tackle those challenges. One thing I want to add before we end our discussion. You see, this book tries to prove with a lot of authenticity, that Savarkar is the father of India's national security.
Correct.
Assam problem, Savarkar was the first leader to warn about Assam problem. China,
Even the
Pakistan,
Andaman, importance of the Andaman.
Andaman. China, most important is China. China was born in 1948, today's China. In 52, Savarkar was the first leader to tell the nation that China has overtaken India in military terms. And India has a problem on hands. And that time he had recommended that India should become a nuclear power. Had India become a nuclear power then, it would have been a superpower today. Then in 1954, when Jawaharlal Nehru came up with the principle of Panchashil, he evolved 5 mantras, which he said that if India and India's neighboring nations follow those mantras, they will be able to live in peace and brotherhood. That time Savarkar was the first to warn. Savarkar said, after way China has followed Tibet, if you talk with China in such weak terms, then China's thirst for swallowing foreign land will grow. And I will not be surprised if China attacks India and swallows India's land. He said in 54.
54.
Which proved correct in 1962. Correct?
In fact, 59 itself, they occupied Aksai Chin. The war happened in 62, but they were already in occupation before that.
Then in 54, he issued another statement. He said, Jawaharlal Nehru, your Panchil comprises beads of the rosary. Mala, mala.
Islamic rosary.
While China's Panchil is bombs, missiles, tanks, machine guns. Savarkar used to believe that military greatness, without military greatness, no nation can become great.
Correct.
Biggest example is Taliban. Taliban is protector of Islam on this globe, correct? Most feared organization, which has thrown out even America, correct? Just see, China has committed untold atrocities on Uyghur Muslims just across the Afghanistan border in Xinjiang province.
Correct.
Yet Taliban is not able to challenge China.
Correct.
Get my point? So military greatness is a prerequisite for a nation which thinks of leading the world or becoming great. Secondly, he said that no two nations can be permanent friends or permanent enemies on the global stage.
Okay.
The relationship between two nations is driven by their needs, interests. So he called it enlightened diplomacy at that time. Had we followed these principles from day one, we would have superpower. You see the kind of strength which India has. Nobody has the kind of skilled labor which India has. If there is a carpenter, his family is into carpentry for the last 500 years. Ready-made skilled labor available. Nehru failed to make use of. Get my point?
I think let's conclude this session with one quote on what he said, Savarkarji said, which you've quoted in your book. I'm reading from your book, 94th page. This is probably the richest tribute, in his own words, what he said, we can offer to Veer Savarkar on his Punyatithi. I would reject even Indrapad, the seat of Lord Indra, if that is the reward I am offered for becoming a non-Hindu, and instead would prefer to die as the last Hindu.
That says everything.
It says everything.
That says everything about Savarkar.
Yes. Wonderful conclusion.
And thank you so much for bringing this to the audience and for the wonderful research that you have done in bringing out Veer Savarkar to the public.
My co-author Chirayu Pandit has also contributed a lot. he actually was helping me with the book. But when I saw that he is making a significant contribution, I offered him to become my co-author.
Strongly recommend each one of you, please pick up this book to not just learn about Veer Savarkar, but to learn to be a true patriotic and Hindu who can survive and who can let the Hindu civilization survive. Thank you a lot for your
Thank
great
you very
work.
much, Udayji. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot, Mamidi Giridhar garu. Thank you very much. So, Veer Savarkar, ఈ పుస్తకం ఇమ్మీడియట్గా మీకు వీలుంటే ఈ పుస్తకాన్ని కొనే ప్రయత్నం చేయండి. దానికి సంబంధించిన లింక్ని నేను ఈ డిస్క్రిప్షన్లో పెట్టే ప్రయత్నం చేస్తాను. ఉదయ్ మాహుర్కర్ గారు, చిరాయు పండిట్ గారు రచించిన ఈ పుస్తకం ఖచ్చితంగా ప్రతి ఒక్కరి ఇంట్లో ఉండాల్సిన పుస్తకం. దీంట్లో ఉండే విషయాల్ని తెలుసుకొని మన నెక్స్ట్ జనరేషన్స్కి మనం అందించే ప్రయత్నం ఈ రోజు నుంచే మొదలు పెడదాం. చూస్తూనే ఉండండి నేషనలిస్ట్ హబ్, మనసా వాచా కర్మణ, దేశ హితం కోసం.